Look at the sheer force transferring through the legs of a sprinter. Every footfall sends hundreds of pounds of kinetic energy crashing through the ankle, up the knee, and into the hip. Yet, these structures don't shatter. They absorb the shock and immediately convert it into forward propulsion. This is made possible by synovial joints. These fluid-filled, cartilage-lined mechanical linkages are engineered to solve a massive physical problem: how to bend without breaking under load. But if you look closely at human anatomy, you realize there is no such thing as a perfect joint. Every articulation in the human body is an architectural compromise between two competing physical states: mobility and stability. A shoulder can dislocate by reaching too far backward, while a hip bears 8 times your body weight during a sprint without buckling. To understand how our skeletons actually work, we have to decode this mobility-stability spectrum by examining the shoulder, the hip joint, and the ankle. Joint anatomy serves as a precise physical record of evolutionary load demands, prioritizing either degrees of freedom or load-bearing stability. These are the glenohumeral and hip joints, stripped of soft tissue. They represent the endpoints of bony congruency. The shoulder features a shallow, pear-shaped socket called the glenoid fossa. Compare that to the deep, cup-like acetabulum of the pelvis. The math highlights the structural discrepancy. The glenoid fossa only covers about 25 to 30% of the humeral head at any given time. The hip socket covers more than 55% of the femoral head. Because the shoulder lacks deep bony congruency, it relies on a concavity compression mechanism. It requires continuous, active muscular force, pulling the arm bone into the shallow socket to prevent immediate dislocation. This active compression is provided by the dynamic stabilizers, the 4 muscles of the rotator cuff. They continuously fire to steer and pin the humerus against the glenoid during movement. The hip solves the stability problem completely differently. Instead of burning high amounts of muscular energy for dynamic stability, it relies on static, passive structures. Chief among these is the iliofemoral ligament. It originates on the pelvis and branches into a Y shape on the femur. It is the strongest ligament in the human body and features a highly specific spiral fiber orientation. As the hip extends, like when you stand up straight, these spiral fibers twist tighter. This creates a passive lock, mechanically securing the joint in place so you can stand upright with minimal muscle action. Maximum multi-axial mobility exacts a high energy cost in the form of continuous muscular stabilization. Massive axial loading, meanwhile, is handled efficiently by the low-energy passive locking of deep bones and dense ligaments. But stability isn't always a permanent state. Look at the immense pressure placed on an ankle in point. Here, stability fluctuates dynamically based strictly on the joint's physical position in space. The ankle is a hinge formed by the distal ends of the tibia and fibula. Tight together by a fibrous syndesmosis, they form a rectangular, socket-like bony structure known as the ankle mortise. Inside this mortise sits the talus, a bone with a highly specific geometric profile. The superior articular surface of the talus is called the trochlea. Its anterior dimension, the front, is significantly wider than its posterior dimension. This asymmetrical wedge shape dictates exactly how the joint behaves when you pull your toes upward, a movement called dorsiflexion. As the ankle dorsiflexes, the wider anterior portion of the talus is driven into the mortise. It wedges tightly against the walls, creating a highly stable, close-packed position where the bones interlock securely. The mechanics completely reverse when you point your toes downward in plantar flexion. As the narrow posterior portion of the talus slides into the mortise, it leaves empty space between the bone and the socket walls. This creates a vulnerable, loose-packed state with a high potential for microwobble. The ankle's structural geometry dictates that its physical vulnerability is strictly determined by its mechanical position in space at any given millisecond. Connecting these theoretical models to clinical data reveals that the most common joint injuries occur exactly where these anatomical designs are most vulnerable. Take the extreme mobility of the shoulder. When the arm is forced into severe abduction and external rotation, like a highly torqued throwing motion, the humeral head is driven forward and downward, easily slipping out of the shallow glenoid. This specific anterior dislocation often results in a Bankart lesion. This is a physical tearing of the inferior glenohumeral ligament and the anterior labrum, the cartilaginous rim that was supposed to deepen the socket. The ankle has a similarly predictable point of failure. The lateral ankle sprain is the most common musculoskeletal injury in the human body, frequently seen during high-velocity changes of direction. The damage almost always occurs when the foot is in that unstable, loose-packed position of plantar flexion. Add a rapid inward rolling motion, called inversion, to a plantar flexed foot, and you exceed the structural limits of the joint's outer supports. The lateral ligaments fail first because they are distinct, cord-like bands that are drastically weaker than the massive, fan-shaped deltoid ligament on the medial side of the ankle. The primary casualty is the anterior talofibular ligament, or ATFL. Because it is pulled taut during plantar flexion, it takes the full brunt of the inversion force, stretching and snapping under the uneven load. Clinical pathologies manifest as predictable mechanical failures, occurring exactly where evolutionary engineering treated structural safety for mobility. Analyzing a joint's ligaments and bones is essentially reverse engineering the specific physical loads that joint was built to endure. This is true across the body. Compound joints manage immense forces without deep sockets by relying on complex soft tissues, like the shock-absorbing menisci of the knee or the triangular fibrocartilage complex in the wrist. But there is a final, hidden architectural constraint that governs all joints: their vascular supply. A bone's shape and movement dictate its precarious blood supply. In the hip, the medial femoral circumflex artery ascends the femoral neck, flowing backward to the head. Similarly, in the wrist's scaphoid, blood enters distally and travels backward to the proximal pole. If a fracture occurs across these limited pathways, like a break at the femoral neck or scaphoid waist, the blood supply is instantly severed. This causes avascular necrosis, or AVN, the localized death of bone tissue from blood loss, causing total bone collapse. The structural design of a joint dictates not only its mechanical capacity for movement, but its biological capacity to heal. The study of these joints reveals the exact mechanical trade-offs the human body makes to enable locomotion and dexterity.